are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello, and welcome to our first episode of MidSouth Matters on Germantown Municipal Television. I'm your host, Ruth Dunning. MidSouth Matters is an interview show with guests ranging from politicians to reporters to authors to political theory experts to the Peace Corps. We hope to inform you and to challenge some of your preconceived ideas. My guest today is Clay Francis, who may challenge your preconceived notion of feminism, a frequently misunderstood political theory. Clay Francis is an international issues teacher at the Governor's School for International Studies. Last year, Clay taught at the Hutchinson School in Memphis. The Tennessee Geographic Alliance named him the 2015 Tom and Stella Mullane Geography Teacher of the Year. And this fall, he begins working on his PhD at Vanderbilt University. Welcome, Clay. Glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to tell a little story first before we
fun.
begin. You gave this program to an exclusive boys' school. Most of the boys attended the program grumbling about, they had no interest in feminism at all.
Right.
And they came out proud feminists. So that's what we hope we're going to get.
Exactly.
Yes.
We're going to talk about some of those ideas maybe that they had going into the talk, and then some of the ideas that I think they walked away with, and then I hope that we can walk away with.
We can do the same thing here. Okay, well, first of all, define feminism for us.
Well, I've got a couple of ideas in my head about this. The first one is I've got an image we'll see on slide 4 that says, "Down with the patriarchy." And so I think that oftentimes people assume when we talk about feminism that it is this set of beliefs that says we must tear down what men have in the world. And there is this structure in which men are on top and we have to take them down. Mm-hmm. But I'm here to say that that is not necessarily the narrative that I believe to be feminism. And let me just first say that there are many different ways that we can talk about it. This is just the way that I sort of think about it and the way that many people have explained it to me. And so with that in mind, I would like to say that feminism is, on slide 5, the advocacy of women's rights on political, social, and economic grounds. And so that's what it is to me.
Why do women have to have advocacy?
Well, if you think about historically, in the world in which we live, there have been structures in which men have taken power. Oftentimes that power was because of strength, oftentimes that power was because of cultural norms that had been put into place. And so, we've seen several different waves of feminism to come through, the first being suffrage, which gave women the right to vote in the early 1900s. And then we see other waves that come in, cultural revolutions that allow women to go out into the workforce. And then what I want to talk about today are just some of the things that have happened recently that I think really have put feminism on a lot of people's minds and made them rethink sort of these preconceived notions that we still need to fight for equality. And there are many ways that we could talk about what that is.
And equality is kind of the key word here.
It is.
Equality of opportunity, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, access and opportunity, and ensuring that the world in which I grew up in is going to, or that I've grown up in, continues to improve for future generations.
Do you have any examples you want to show us?
I did. I came prepared today with 5 examples from the past year that I think display this definition of feminism, this idea of fighting for equality. And not only does it involve women, but our discussion today is going to talk about how do we get men engaged in this discussion about feminism as well.
Okay.
So, are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, let's take a look at that first one that I have. It is Malala Yousafzai, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize last year for her work in Swat Valley, Pakistan.
Okay, tell us what happened there.
So in 2009, the Taliban came through her hometown and attempted to break down the educational system there. They have a sort of a fundamentalist view of how education should work. And they did not think that women should receive the same type of education. And so at this time, they were attempting to remove girls from schools. And this young girl, Malala Yousafzai, was not happy with that. And so she penned an anonymous blog with the help of the BBC of her experience of trying to get an education, of trying to go to school. And so she became this activist for women's rights, but also just for the idea of education as a fundamental right, going back to that idea of equality. And as a result of her gains, the strength that she had in that area, the Taliban decided that they didn't think that she should be allowed to operate in the same way as she had. And they actually boarded her school bus, asked for her by name, and they shot her in the face. And so she was shot here, and we've got an image of that on slide 9 of the aftermath of that. She was in a coma for a short time.
Was she treated in Pakistan?
She was treated at first in Pakistan, and then she went to the United Kingdom. And sort of had traveled back and forth there. But amazingly, after she came out, it was sort of a call to arms for her. When she left the hospital, she said, now more than ever is the time that we need to fight. And the Nobel Peace Prize Committee recognized her efforts and decided to give her the co-award for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014. She even wrote a book called I Am Malala to describe her story. And in her acceptance letter, if you don't mind, I'd like to share a quote.
Please do.
She says, she says, "Dear sisters and brothers, dear fellow children, we must work, not wait, not just the politicians and the world leaders. We all need to contribute. Me, you, we. It is our duty." And so you can see how she takes this approach that it's not just this top-down, fighting for equality doesn't mean coming from the top. It also means working from the bottom up. And so I think she is just a fantastic example of what it means to be a feminist in the modern era.
Very good. Do we have another example?
Well, that's one far away. Let's think of one that's a little bit closer to home. And so on slide 12, I've got an example of Monet Davis. Monet Davis is a pitcher for the Philadelphia Taney Dragons, and she is the only female player on the Little League team that went to the Little League World Series. And she had an amazing run there. She was the first Little League player to ever be featured on Sports Illustrated cover. And so it sort of takes this idea of throw like a girl and turns it on its head.
Right. It means something very good now instead of being derogatory.
It does. And so when we think about this idea of Monet Davis being able to engage in this sport in a way that few female athletes at that age level had done before. She was awarded the Sports Illustrated Kid of the Year. She was on magazine covers, and she was all in several types of media and advertising campaigns throughout. Just sort of think about this idea of gender stereotypes and how we approach this idea of gender stereotypes, that girls can't play baseball, boys play baseball. Girls have to play softball or play a different sport or not play sports.
Let's talk about this idea of gender identity. You're getting to that a little bit.
Sure. You know, when I think about my educational experience, and I know that my teachers were well-meaning, but I think that there was a focus that boys are good at math and science because they're analytical, because they can think in these ways, and yet girls are better for the humanities because they have this passion for reading, they have a passion for history.
And we're going to stop right there.
Okay.
We're going to come right back in just a minute. We have to take a short break. More with Mr. Francis when we return. Please stay with us.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw in the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
You make me wear my bike helmet. Taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to MidSouth Matters. We're joined by Clay Francis and an interesting discussion of feminism. So, Clay, we want to finish up talking about gender and what gender means to feminism.
Sure. When we're thinking about, we were discussing how boys are supposed to be the analytical ones and girls are the passionate ones. And this idea of gender is, in some ways, a social construction. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say that there aren't some biological differences between men and women. There are obvious ones there. But I think that we often get entrenched in this idea that what we have created is what has to be, that math and science are for the boys and humanities are for the girls. And the statistics show that that's not true, that if you look at grade point averages in high schools across the country, you will find that boys and girls have the same scores in both math and science and history and the humanities. And so it has less to do with some inherent difference and more to do with the way that we view ourselves. You know, we've come a long way from, on slide 14, we can see an example here. This is from a Mattel advertising campaign, and it's got Barbie, and it says, "Math is hard, let's go shopping."
Yeah, oh, infuriating kind of statement.
Right,
yeah.
Right, and so this was something that was marketed to young girls. This was something that Barbie, you had the little pull string, and she would say
this over and over and over and over, yes.
And if you're a young girl, and you're being told in your school that math and science isn't for you, and then the Barbie that you purchased says, "Math is hard, let's go shopping," you might begin to develop this idea, well, maybe I'm not good at math and science. Maybe this isn't.
In fact, that is what happens.
Exactly.
You do develop that idea.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's what happens at the younger age. We see that there's sort of this dichotomy between what people have, this idea of gender. One gender has one set of norms and the other has a different set of norms.
Good. I had not seen that Barbie ad until you showed it to me. It's distressing in a lot of ways.
Frightening.
Okay, what about pay gap? Is there still a pay gap?
Indeed, and there is a White House panel that did some interesting research on this last year. On slide 15, you can actually see the raw data here. It says that women make about 78 cents for every dollar that a man makes.
Now that's in exactly the same job.
It is, and there are a lot of people who will critique this and say that this number is incorrect because it says that women work different jobs and men might be higher up in the company and of course have more opportunities. But I think that is just an indicative of the structural problems that we have and thinking about how do we approach this idea of 78 cents on the dollar, and even lower number for women of color that have faced maybe 65, 70 cents to the dollar for the typical male. And it's not only that we have problems with pay gap, but the United States is a unique country in the world in terms of how we treat mothers specifically. And if we can take a look at slide 16, we can see that almost everywhere in the world has paid maternal leave. Or if we're thinking about non-traditional families, there are some type of paid parental leave. We are among small island nations of the entire Western and developing world that do not offer parents some time to take off and to focus on the family, whether it's the father taking time off, which I think is also part of feminism, and recognizing that getting fathers in parental roles that maybe were traditionally mothers, and also vice versa, of having giving women the opportunity to sort of take that role as the breadwinner for the family, which is increasingly common.
Common, yes. My son actually works for a company that allows paternal leave. I was surprised and happy, and he will soon be a new father, so that's
congratulations,
an important,
by the way.
That's an important part of their planning.
Right, and I think that's an important key too, to think about how corporations are starting to take a look at this and say, this is what younger people are looking for. And if we don't offer paid parental leave, our employees, we're not going to be able to attract the talent that we want.
Absolutely. Yes, he works for he's a scientist. So they have to have a very select type of employee, and they have to offer at least parental leave, other things too. But okay, what else are you gonna?
Well, so we've looked at international one instance, we've got one local instance. Let's think about some sort of the global initiatives that are, we'll think about one that has been started by Emma Watson, and I've got an image of her on slide 18. She is running the UN Women campaign called He for She, and her entire campaign is, like I've said, getting men involved in this conversation about feminism and asking them to take a proactive role, because if we don't fight for these ideas of equality, then the system doesn't work, right? I mean, of course, we want everybody to focus on equality, but we need everybody to sort of buy into this idea that it's okay for men to be compassionate, and it's okay for women to be strong, and it's okay for us to break down those gender norms that we often feel like we cannot. So I think her program is one that is sort of gaining steam, and I think it sort of helps us break away from this idea of men must be manly and women must be girly. So
Tell us who Emma Watson is.
Emma Watson is the Muggle-born, in the Harry Potter world, she's the Muggle-born actress that plays Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter film series. So she's received quite a bit of notoriety for her role in the films, but also for what she has done.
And her not notoriety, but her fame from Harry Potter has allowed her to be heard and listened to, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So that's, if we sort of think about across, those are some global issues. That's not to say that we can't think about what is happening locally too, and we can think about the media is a really
talk about the media.
Tool.
Yeah.
The media is a very important tool in understanding how we look at ourselves, the identities that we develop, and media matters. And so there is a test that I want to tell you about. It's on slide 21. It's called the Bechdel Test, and it seems a fairly innocuous thing, but here's the test, and we can talk about some of the films that may or may not pass this test. The first test is, are there two named female characters in the film? The second question.
You mean the character has a name?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
two. All you need
waitress,
you just have to have two. Okay.
Do they talk to each other? Meaning, do the women speak to one another? And then the last one, do they talk to each other about something other than the lead role, which is traditionally a male? Do they talk to each other about something other than that man in that role? And
does it have to be something like philosophy, or can it just be about clothes?
It can be
about shopping.
It can be about it's more about the character development of those characters. Do those characters develop fully, or are they flat? Are they caricatures of women? And so
we'll get back and we'll analyze it. Okay, and we'll continue our discussion with Clay Francis after this short break. Please stay with us.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Don't worry, 74 people were picked before me in the NFL draft.
To fight childhood obesity, United Way and the NFL are helping kids play at least 60 minutes a day.
Okay, time for the team obstacle course. Yay!
What this place needs is more healthy kids. To get involved or donate, go to unitedway.org/play60.
Now I get it.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello, and welcome back. We're discussing feminism as a political theory with Clay Francis, and we're going to discuss our test now.
So we've just described this Bechdel Test, which she was a comedian that she came up with this idea. She was looking at films and didn't see women that had strong roles. And there are a lot of movies that don't pass this test. I think the evidence shows that they are getting better, but if you want to think about movies like the Star Wars trilogy, both old and new, right, they are focused solely on the men. If we think about these other epic film series like the Lord of the Rings film series, again, one that doesn't show women in any shape, form, or fashion other than just a flat character that is a sort of a side character to the male characters in the film.
So are there any good examples?
There are lots of good examples. If you want to think about one of the most recent ones, this would have been Mad Max, the Mad Max film series, Fury Road. This just came out about a month ago. This film is probably, I think, typically would have been one in which the male character, there's sort of a lot of revved up engines, there's a lot of fighting scenes, one you would think would be solely based on this male persona, and yet Charlize Theron in this film takes on a role that is parallel to the lead character of Mad Max in the film. And she has a developed story, and she meets other women that have developed stories as well. And so I think this is a positive trend that we're seeing on the big screen.
Good. What about the small screen?
Well, if we think about the small screen, I think probably the best example of that is on slide 22. Shonda Rhimes. She's probably the most well-known showrunner right now in Hollywood.
Explain what a showrunner is.
Well, she has created 3 shows. Well, not more than 3, but these are the 3 that are out right now. She currently runs, from slide 23, we can see Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, and How to Get Away with Murder. All strong female leads are on these shows. And the other thing that's great about these shows is that they have sort of this intersectionality of understanding that feminism means different things to different people. So for a black woman, it might mean something different than a white woman, or for a transgender person, it might mean something than a straight person or a gay person. And so she really sort of breaks down those stereotypes in a way that no other show on television is doing right now.
Is she winning awards?
She is, and that's the great thing about it, is that for a long time people were afraid that if you have female leads, if you had focused just on these ideas, that nobody would watch the show. But she essentially owns Thursday night of television. Her shows are back-to-back on Thursday nights. And she's
all on the same station?
All on ABC. All on ABC. And they're all doing supremely well. So I think we can now say that it's certainly time for other television stations and other movie producers to say, we can have these storylines, we can have these intersectional stories that maybe haven't been on television, that break stereotypes of race and gender and sexual orientation. And I think that they're being well received.
I have an example of something.
Okay.
I'm a golf fanatic.
Sure.
And the Golf Channel suddenly is showing all the women's golf.
Right.
Now the prize money is not as high, it's not the prestigious event that a man's tournament is, but it's on every week.
Right.
You know, it's amazing.
Right.
So,
and I think that that's going to continue to change as we think about moving forward in sports, and as we address this idea of equality. You know, just another short example, the Women's World Cup is going on right now, and the women are playing on turf, which is by all standards an inferior substance to natural grass.
and it gets very hot, as I understand.
They had people offer to pay to have turf installed. There was no cost to install turf in the stadiums. And FIFA, which is embroiled in other scandals right now, decided not to put grass on those fields. And so that's just a small example that has a large ramification. So.
I did read just recently that the temperature is 120 degrees.
120 degrees in Canada.
Yeah,
right.
on the right now, while they're playing right now.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, anything else on television?
Well, I want to talk about just a couple of things about if we've got stories of feminism that are being told by women, and I've sort of just exclusively up to this point really talked about the great work that the women are doing. I just want to give one example of a man who is engaged in this discussion, and I'll go back to the Harry Potter story.
Okay.
If we think about Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, who is Harry Potter in the film series, he is also a sort of a proclaimed feminist. He says, and I'll give you just the quote here, he says, quote, "I'm a feminist just by the virtue of the fact that I believe in equal rights for everyone, end quote. And so that's just another way of understanding that the different narratives that we tell people matters. And so getting men involved in the conversation is an important thing to do.
Right. Any other examples of anything? We've got a couple of minutes left. We can just let you talk about what you'd like to talk about.
I think I would like to talk about taking action.
Good.
And so I've presented this problem, and I've said that gender stereotypes and these ideas and norms that we have of what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman are a problem. And so here's a couple of things that I think that we should probably think about doing. And the first one of those is to take "for a girl" or "like a girl" out of your vocabulary. So think about, you're smart for a girl, you are articulate for a girl. We need to remove these ideas, not only for gender, but also for race and ethnicity. We need to start seeing individuals, right? And that would be my next idea, is to look at the world around us and understand that we all experience the world in different ways, and that those experiences make up who we are, and we can't discount those experiences. And if we start to think that way, if we start to recognize that the individual experience is important and different for everyone, no matter if you're rich or poor, black or white, man or woman, rich or poor, that's going to allow us to break down these norms and these stereotypes.
Very good. Thank you. I want to thank you at home for joining us today on MidSouth Matters, where we discussed feminism with Mr. Clay Francis. If you have any questions about this or any other show on Germantown Municipal Television, or if you would like to watch our programming, visit GMTVonline.org. You can also follow the station on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on MidSouth Matters. So.